I wasn't even supposed to be on Facebook that morning. I'd been avoiding it for weeks, honestly. Too much drama with my ex's friends still popping up in my feed. But I was killing time before a work meeting, mindlessly scrolling through my phone with my coffee getting cold on the desk, and that's when I saw it. My brother's face staring back at me from a post shared by some distant cousin that I barely remembered. The picture was from his high school graduation, that dopey smile he always had when he was trying to look serious, and above it, in that awful fancy script font people use for these things, in loving memory of Ethan James Morrison, 1995-2024. I actually laughed, like out loud, startling the guy in the cubicle next to me, because Ethan and I had literally eaten pizza together the night before. We had watched the game at his apartment, argued about whether the Rams had any shot this season, and he'd stolen the last slice when I wasn't looking. Very much alive behavior. My first thought was that it was some sick joke. We're twins, identical technically, though we don't really look that much alike anymore since he grew out his hair and I kept mine short. We used to pull pranks on people all the time growing up, switching places in class, that kind of thing. Maybe this was his idea of a hilarious prank, really elaborate and deeply unfunny. But then I clicked on the post and my stomach dropped. It wasn't just some random share. It was posted by my mother's account, my actual mother. And the obituary was detailed. Ethan passed away tragically on April 15th in a hiking accident in the Sierra Nevada mountains. He was an adventurous soul who loved the outdoors, his family, and making people laugh. He is survived by his parents, Robert and Linda Morrison, and will be deeply missed by all who knew him. April 15th. That was 6 months ago. 6 months during which I had definitely seen Ethan. We had brunch with Mom for Mother's Day. We went to a concert in July. Just last week we'd met up for drinks after work. I felt like I was losing my mind. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through the comments. Dozens of them. People from high school, old family friends, even our aunt from Portland who I hadn't talked to in years. All of them posting condolences, sharing memories, talking about what a great guy Ethan was. I can't believe he's gone. He was taken too soon. Rest in peace, Ethan. I tried to call Ethan, straight to voicemail. I texted him. Dude, call me right now. Something weird is happening. Nothing. I stared at my phone, watching those 2 gray check marks stay gray. Not delivered. My meeting started and I completely blanked through it. My boss asked me a direct question and I had no idea what she'd even said. I mumbled something about not feeling well and ducked out early. I drove straight to Ethan's apartment. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I kept thinking about how he hadn't answered his phone, but that wasn't unusual. Ethan always forgot to charge his phone. I'd given him shit about it 1,000,000 times. His car was in its usual spot. That was good. That was normal. I buzzed his apartment. No answer. I buzzed again, holding it down longer. Still nothing. I called my mom. She picked up on the 3rd ring, and her voice sounded off. Quiet. Dylan, honey, how are you? Mom, what the hell's going on? I just saw... There's an obituary for Ethan on Facebook. There was a long pause. Too long. I could hear her breathing on the other end. Mom? Dylan, sweetheart, I think you should come over. Your father and I need to talk to you. Talk to me about what? About the fake obituary you posted about your son who's alive? Is this some kind of... I don't even know what this is, Mom. Please. Her voice cracked. Just come over. Don't go to Ethan's place. Come here. Why can't I go to Ethan's? He's not answering and I'm already here, so... Dylan. She said my name sharp, like when I was a kid and about to do something dangerous. Come home. Now. I stood there in front of Ethan's building, phone pressed to my ear, feeling cold all over despite the warm morning sun. Something in her voice made my throat tight. Okay, I heard myself say. I'm coming. The drive to my parents' house took 20 minutes, but felt like hours. I kept trying to make sense of it. Maybe Ethan was in some kind of witness protection situation. That was insane, but less insane than the alternative my brain kept trying to suggest. Maybe there was a different Ethan Morrison and Mom had gotten confused. But she'd used his photo, his full name, our birthday. I pulled into their driveway and saw both their cars there. Middle of a weekday. Dad should have been at work. Mom's yoga class was Thursday mornings, but they were both home. Dad opened the door before I could knock. He looked like he'd aged 10 years since I'd seen him at Sunday dinner 2 weeks ago. His eyes were red-rimmed and his shirt was wrinkled, which was not like him at all. My dad ironed everything, even his gym clothes. "Dylan," he said, and his voice broke on my name. Mom appeared behind him in the hallway. She was crying, actually crying, tears running down her face, and my mom never cried. She didn't cry at her own mother's funeral. She didn't cry when I broke my arm falling out of the treehouse when I was 9. "What is going on?" I demanded. "Where's Ethan?" They looked at each other, one of those long married couple looks that communicate entire conversations. Then Mom took a shaky breath. "Ethan died 6 months ago, sweetheart. On that hiking trip in April. There was an accident on the trail. He fell, and by the time the rangers got to him, She pressed her hand to her mouth. "That's not possible," I said flatly. "I had pizza with him yesterday." Dad's face crumpled. "Dylan, you were with us yesterday. We had dinner here. You told us about your project at work, the one with the difficult client. We watched Jeopardy!" The room tilted. No, I was with Ethan. We watched the game. He ate the last slice of pizza and I got mad at him. Mom stepped closer. "Honey, you've been struggling since the accident. The grief has been really hard on you. You sometimes talk about Ethan like he's still here. The doctor said it's a normal part of processing the loss of a twin, especially—" "What doctor? I never saw any doctor!" My voice came out too loud, echoing in their quiet house. "Dr. Chen, you've been seeing her since May," Dad said gently, like I was something fragile that might break. "You don't always remember the appointments afterward. She said that's normal, too, with the trauma." I backed away from both of them. "This is insane. You're both insane. I'm calling Ethan right now, and he's going to answer, and you're going to see—" But even as I pulled out my phone, I was remembering things that didn't quite fit. How sometimes when I texted Ethan, I never got a response. How I couldn't actually remember the last time I'd been inside his apartment. How at that concert in July, I'd gone alone. Hadn't I? No, Ethan was there, wasn't he? My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. "Dylan," Mom whispered. "We buried our son. We buried Ethan. I'm so sorry, baby. But he's gone." I left my parents' house without another word, got in my car, slammed the door, and just drove. No destination, just away. Away from their concerned faces and gentle voices and the absolute insanity they were trying to make me believe. Ethan wasn't dead. He couldn't be dead. Dead people don't text you about being late for plans. Dead people don't argue with you about sports. Dead people don't exist in your life, solid and real and present, for 6 months after they supposedly died. I ended up at a coffee shop across town, one neither of us had ever been to, and pulled out my laptop. If my parents had somehow lost their minds or were having some shared delusion, I'd find proof. I'd find Ethan's digital footprint, social media posts, credit card usage, something. His Facebook was still active, but when I scrolled through it and really looked at it, my stomach started hurting. The last post was from April 14th, a photo of a mountain trail where caption, "Ready for the big hike. Sierra Nevada, here I come." After that, nothing. For 6 months, nothing from Ethan himself. But there were posts on his wall. Birthday wishes in August from people who didn't know, someone tagging him in a meme last month, and then, scattered among those, the posts from people who clearly did know. "Miss you, man. Thinking about you today. Can't believe it's been 3 months." I felt sick. I checked Instagram, same thing. Last post, April 14th. His story views had stopped that same day. "No," I said out loud, making the woman at the next table glance over. "No, this doesn't prove anything. He could have just stopped posting. He was always saying social media was toxic anyway." I tried to think of concrete moments, recent ones, where I'd definitely seen him, that dinner last night. But as I tried to focus on it, the memory felt slippery. Where exactly had we eaten? What had we talked about? The harder I tried to grab onto the details, the more they seemed to blur. The concert in July. I bought 2 tickets, I was sure of it. I checked my email, found the confirmation, 1 ticket. I'd purchased 1 ticket. For myself. Mother's Day brunch. I could see it so clearly, the 4 of us at that restaurant downtown, Ethan making Mom laugh about something. But when I really concentrated, tried to remember what the waitress had looked like, what we'd ordered, everything went fuzzy. And hadn't it been just 3 of us at that table? Me sitting across from Mom and Dad had said something like, "Ethan would have loved this place." and Mom had gotten quiet and I'd changed the subject because he wasn't there. Because he was already dead. No. I shook my head hard. No, this is crazy. I'm not crazy. I called our mutual friend Jason, one of Ethan's roommates from college. He answered on the second ring. Dylan, hey man, what's up? Jason, when's the last time you saw Ethan? There was a pause. Dude, are you okay? Just answer the question. Dylan, I saw him at the funeral and in April. We all did. Are you having another episode? Do you need me to call your parents? Another episode. The words hit me like cold water. What do you mean another episode? Jason's voice got softer, more careful. Man, you've been through a lot. What happened to Ethan and then how hard you took it. Nobody blames you for struggling, but maybe you should talk to your therapist. Isn't that what Dr. Chen said to do when you start feeling confused about... I hung up. My heart was racing. I didn't have a therapist. I'd never heard of any Dr. Chen before today. This was wrong. All of this was wrong. And everyone was lying to me. Or I was lying to myself. I opened my phone's calendar app, started scrolling backward through the months, looking for appointments, plans, anything with Ethan's name. There were entries, lunch with E, game night at E's place, call E about Mom's birthday, scattered throughout the last 6 months. But when I clicked on them, there were no details, no addresses, no timestamps, just the notation, almost like I'd written them down but never actually gone, or had gone alone and told myself he was there. I found myself scrolling further back, to April 15th, the day he supposedly died. My calendar for that day just said, E's hiking trip, worried. And then April 16th, hospital. I didn't remember any of that. I didn't remember being worried or going to any hospital But I did, didn't I? Somewhere deep in my mind there was a memory trying to surface, a phone call in the middle of the night. My mom's voice broken in a way I'd never heard before. The words, "There's been an accident." Stop it, I whispered to myself. Stop! I spent the next 3 hours going through everything. Old texts with Ethan. The last real conversation was April 14th. Bank records. I hadn't Venmo'd him money for our shared pizza yesterday. In fact, the last Venmo between us was in March, when he'd paid me back for concert tickets we'd bought for a show that never happened because he died before the concert date. I checked my recent calls. No outgoing calls to Ethan's number in 6 months. But I tried to call him this morning, hadn't I? I checked again. There was no record of it. Had I actually dialed? Or had I just thought about dialing and my brain had filled in the rest? The worst part was finding the photos. I'd been looking for recent pictures of us together, proof that he'd been around. I found plenty of photos from the last 6 months on my phone, but Ethan wasn't in any of them. Places I remembered going with him, I was alone in the pictures, or with other people, but never him. There was one photo that made me stop breathing. From Mother's Day, me and my parents at that restaurant. 3 people, 3 water glasses, 3 plates. My mom was smiling, but her eyes were red, and I was sitting in a chair with an empty chair next to me. And I would have sworn on anything, that Ethan had been sitting there. I could see him in my mind. His stupid flip-flops that Mom always complained about. His blue shirt, the way he'd stolen a bite of my pancakes. But he wasn't in the photo. He'd never been there. My hands were shaking as I searched for grief hallucinations twins on my laptop. The results made my vision blur. It was a thing, a documented thing. Twins who lost their other half sometimes experience vivid, persistent hallucinations of their sibling. The brain, unable to process the loss, sometimes just filled in the gap. Made you see them, hear them, believe they were still there. Some people reported months of conversations with dead siblings before they could accept the truth. Some never fully did. I found myself on a grief forum, reading posts from other people who'd experienced this. I kept setting a place for him at dinner. I'd turn to tell her something and she'd be there until she wasn't. It felt so real that I thought everyone else was crazy. There was a specific article about identical twins, about how losing your twin was like losing a part of yourself, about how the brain sometimes protected you from that loss by refusing to accept it, by creating an elaborate fiction where your twin was still alive. I slammed my laptop shut, couldn't look at it anymore, but I had to know for sure. I had to see actual physical proof, So I did something I immediately knew was a terrible idea but couldn't stop myself from doing. I looked up the cemetery where my parents said they'd buried him. Greenwood Memorial Park. I knew exactly where it was. We'd driven past it 100 times growing up. I'd never thought I'd be looking for my brother's grave there. The sun was setting as I pulled into the parking lot. The cemetery was mostly empty, just a few other cars scattered around. I sat in my driver's seat for a long time, gripping the steering wheel, trying to make myself get out. If there was a grave, that meant it was real. That meant Ethan was really dead, and I'd been talking to a ghost, or a hallucination, or my own fractured mind for 6 months. If there wasn't a grave, that meant my parents were lying or mistaken, or that this was all some elaborate, awful confusion that could be fixed. I made myself get out of the car. Made myself walk through the cemetery gates. There was a little office building with a light on inside, and an older man at a desk looked up when I came in. "Help you, son? I'm looking for my voice came out rough. "Ethan Morrison, buried in April?" He nodded slowly, sympathy crossing his weathered face. "Section C, row 14. I can walk you over if you'd like." "I can find it." He gave me a map, and I walked out before he could say anything else. Section C wasn't far. The graves were neat rows of headstones, some old and weathered, some new and still shiny. Row 14. I counted them off, my heart pounding harder with each step. And then I saw it. A gray granite headstone, simple and clean. Fresh flowers in a vase at its base. Yellow roses, Ethan's favorites. Though I couldn't remember when I learned that or if I'd always known. The stone read, "Ethan James Morrison, February 3rd, 1995, April 15th, 2024, beloved son and brother." Gone too soon. I stood there as the last light faded from the sky, staring at my brother's name carved in stone, and finally let myself remember what I'd been hiding from for 6 months. I don't know how long I stood at that grave. Long enough that the cemetery lights came on. Long enough that the old man from the offices came out to check on me, then quietly left me alone when he saw my face. The memories were coming back now, sharp and terrible and real. The phone call at 3 a.m. Mom's voice raw with tears. "Dylan, there's been an accident. You need to come to the hospital." The drive through the dark, going too fast, calling Ethan's phone over and over and getting no answer, telling myself it was fine, he was fine, Mom was overreacting. The hospital waiting room. Dad's face gray and collapsed in on itself. The doctor's words that didn't make sense. Massive trauma. By the time they reached him, didn't suffer. Seeing his body, identifying him because I was the only other person on Earth who looked exactly like him. Except he didn't look like me anymore. He looked empty, like someone had taken the Ethanness out and left just a shell behind. The funeral. Me standing up to give a eulogy I didn't remember writing. Looking out at all those faces, everyone crying and thinking this was wrong. This was all wrong. Ethan should be here. Ethan should be making jokes about how bad my speech was. And then, nothing. A gap. Like someone had taken scissors to my memory and cut out everything after the funeral. Except not nothing. Something worse than nothing. My brain had apparently decided that if Ethan was gone, it would just pretend he wasn't. It would fill in the gaps. Create a version of him that could still exist in my life because the alternative, that he was actually gone forever, was too big to process. I'd spent 6 months having conversations with my dead brother, seeing him places he wasn't, making plans with someone who existed only in my fractured mind, and everyone had known. My parents, my friends, even strangers at the funeral, everyone except me. When I finally left the cemetery, I drove back to my parents' house. It was almost 9 p.m. I didn't call ahead, just used my key and walked in. They were in the living room, both of them sitting close together on the couch like they were holding each other up. They looked up when I came in, and Mom's face did this thing, hope and fear mixed together. "You remembered," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. I sank into Dad's recliner, the one Ethan and I used to fight over when we were kids. "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice came out harsh. "Why did you just let me go on thinking he was alive?" "We tried," Dad said. His voice was rough, like he'd been crying. Probably had been. "Dylan, we tried so many times. At first we thought you were just in denial, that you'd accept it in a few days. But then you started talking about seeing him, spending time with him, and when we tried to correct you, you'd get upset." "Upset?" "Violent," Mom said softly. "You threw a plate at the wall. You screamed at us that we were lying, that Ethan had just texted you. We were scared we'd lose you too if we pushed too hard. I put my head in my hands. I didn't remember any of that. I didn't remember throwing anything or screaming at them. Doctor, Chen said we had to let you come to it on your own, Mom continued. That forcing you to confront it before you were ready could cause a complete break. She said your mind was protecting you and eventually you'd be strong enough to accept the truth. We've been waiting 6 months for you to be strong enough. I'm not strong, I said. My voice broke. I'm the opposite of strong. I let myself believe a lie because the truth was too hard. Dad got up and came over to me, put his hand on my shoulder. Grief isn't weakness, son. You lost your twin. You lost the person you shared a womb with, who was there for every single moment of your life until he wasn't. That's not something you just get over. But I didn't even try to get over it. I just pretended it never happened. Who does that? Someone who's hurting, Mom said. She was crying again. Someone who loved his brother so much that living in a world without him was impossible. So you created a world where he was still here? I thought about all those conversations I'd had with Ethan, all the advice he'd given me. Was that my subconscious talking to myself? My own thoughts disguised as his voice because I trusted him more than I trusted myself? The hiking trip, I said. What really happened? My parents looked at each other again. Then Dad spoke, his voice flat and factual, like he'd told this story too many times already. Ethan went on a solo hiking trip in the Sierra Nevadas, something he'd been planning for months. The weather was supposed to be clear, but a storm rolled in faster than predicted. He was on a ridge trail when it hit. Rain, wind, low visibility. We think he tried to find shelter and got too close to the edge. A section of the trail gave way. He stopped, swallowed hard. They found him at the base of a ravine. The ranger said it was instant. He didn't suffer. I wondered if that was true or just something they told themselves. Something they told me. Ethan had been afraid of heights. I remembered that suddenly, sharply. We went to the Grand Canyon when we were 15 and he wouldn't go near the rim. How had I forgotten that? How had I let myself believe he'd be hiking ridge trails alone? I should have been with him, I said. I should have gone on that trip. He asked me to come, and I said I was too busy with work. If I'd been there... Don't. Mom's voice was sharp. Don't do that to yourself. We've all played that game. If I'd talked him out of going. If your father had gone with him, if... It doesn't change anything. It just makes the pain worse. But the pain was already as bad as it could get. Worse because now I had to feel 6 months of grief all at once. All the pain I'd been hiding from, avoiding, denying. It hit me like a wave, and I couldn't breathe through it. I can't do this, I gasped. I can't. He can't be gone. He can't be. I was crying, really crying, for the first time since the funeral, since before the funeral, probably. All those months of false memories, fake conversations, lies I'd told myself, they were gone now, and all that was left was the truth. Ethan was dead. My brother, my twin, the person who knew me better than anyone else in the world, was dead, and he was never coming back. Mom and Dad were both holding me now, and we were all crying together. The way we should have been 6 months ago. The way I should have let us grieve together instead of hiding in my delusion. I'm sorry, I sobbed. I'm so sorry. You lost your son and you had to deal with me losing my mind on top of it. I'm sorry. No, Dad said firmly. No, Dylan, you don't apologize for grief. You don't apologize for survival. We stayed like that for a long time. Eventually my breathing evened out, though my face was wet and my chest ached. What happens now? I asked finally. Now you heal, Mom said. Really heal this time. You keep seeing Dr. Chen. You let yourself feel what you need to feel. You remember Ethan as he really was, not the version you created. And you keep living because that's what he'd want. I don't know if I can. You can, Dad said. You've been strong enough to survive this once already. Even if you don't remember it, you'll be strong enough to survive it again. And this time, you won't be doing it alone. I thought about the grave in the cemetery, the flowers someone had left. Probably my parents visiting regularly while I'd been talking to ghosts. Can I see his stuff? I asked. His real stuff. Not the apartment I thought I was visiting, but his actual things. Mom nodded. They're in the garage. We couldn't bring ourselves to go through them yet. Maybe we could do it together. So that's what we did. At almost 10 o'clock at night, we went out to the garage and opened the boxes my parents had packed from Ethan's apartment 6 months ago. His clothes still smelled like him. His books had his notes in the margins. His laptop was there, and when I opened it, the last Google search was Sierra Nevada trail conditions April. He'd been so excited about that trip. I found his journal in one of the boxes and flipped to the last entry. April 13th. Finally doing the big solo hike I've been planning. Dylan's too busy with work, but that's okay. Sometimes you need to push yourself alone. Excited and a little nervous, but mostly excited. I closed the journal and held it against my chest. "I'm sorry I wasn't there," I whispered. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm so sorry." But he wasn't there to hear me. He hadn't been there for 6 months, and somehow, finally, I was ready to accept that. The next few months were the hardest of my life. Harder than the months I didn't remember, because now I was feeling everything I'd been protecting myself from. I kept seeing Dr. Chen, twice a week at first. She helped me understand what had happened. Dissociative grief disorder, she called it, combined with something called presence hallucinations. My brain had literally rewritten my reality to cope with losing Ethan. "It's more common in identical twins than people realize," she explained during one session. "You shared everything with him. DNA, childhood, memories. Your brain was wired to include him in every experience. When he died, instead of accepting the absence, your mind just filled him back in." "But I seemed normal to everyone else," I said. "I went to work. I functioned." "Outwardly, yes. But you were also having conversations with people about Ethan being alive. You'd get defensive or confused when people referenced his death. Your parents and friends learned to work around it, to not directly contradict your version of reality. They were waiting for you to find your way back. Finding my way back meant grieving properly this time. I went to a support group for people who'd lost siblings, heard their stories, told mine. At first I was embarrassed about the hallucinations, but then I met Sarah, whose brother had died in a car accident, and she admitted she'd done something similar. Kept his voicemail greeting saved on her phone and would call it just to hear him speak. She'd had full conversations with the recording telling him about her day. "We do what we have to do to survive," she told me. "There's no right way to grieve." I started going through Ethan's things more carefully. Found photos I'd forgotten about, inside jokes that made me laugh even as I cried. Found a birthday card he'd bought for me 2 months before the accident, and my birthday was in June, and he'd already picked it out. The card was stupid, something with a bad pun about getting old. The message inside was in his messy handwriting. "Another year of being my less cool twin. Love you, man." I kept that card on my nightstand. I also had to have some hard conversations with people in my life. Jason came over one night with beer and apologies. "Man, I should have handled that better," he said. "When you called asking about Ethan, I just didn't know what to say. Your parents told us all to be gentle, not to force you to remember, but when you were on the phone acting like he was still alive, I panicked." "It's okay," I said, and I meant it. I can't imagine how weird that must have been from your side. Your friend calls you asking about your dead roommate like he's still alive. That's horror movie stuff. "How are you doing now, really?" I stopped, thought about it. "I'm sad. I'm angry. I'm guilty as hell that I wasn't there with him. But I'm also here, you know? I'm actually here in reality, dealing with it. That's progress." Work was another challenge. I'd apparently been doing okay performance-wise, but I'd been distant, distracted. My boss pulled me aside after I'd been back in reality for about a month. "Dylan, I just want you to know we're here for you," she said. "I lost my sister a few years ago. I know how hard it is. Take whatever time you need. I'd almost forgotten that other people had their own grief stories. It wasn't just me. The hardest part was going back to the cemetery. I went with my parents first, then started going alone. I'd sit by Ethan's grave and talk to him, but not like before. Before I believed he could actually hear me, respond to me, be there with me. Now I knew I was just talking to stone and grass and my own memories. But somehow that was okay, maybe even better in a strange way, because I wasn't hiding from the truth anymore. "I got a promotion at work," I told his gravestone one Saturday morning. "The project I was working on, the one I told you about, except I was actually telling myself it went really well. The client loved it. You'd probably make fun of me for being excited about a work project, but you'd also be proud, I think." The stone didn't answer. The wind blew through the trees. A bird sang somewhere nearby. "I'm dating someone," I continued. "Her name is Rachel. We met at the grief support group. Actually, her mom died last year. We went for coffee last week, and I didn't pretend you were there. I just told her about you, the real you. She wants to hear more stories. I think you'd like her. She laughs at bad jokes like you did." I touched the top of the gravestone. It was warm from the sun. "I still miss you every day. Sometimes I turn to tell you something and it hits me all over again that you're not there. But I'm not pretending anymore. I'm not hiding. I'm trying to live the life you don't get to have and do it well enough for both of us." A few months later, I did something I'd been thinking about for a while. I went back to the Sierra Nevadas, to the trail where Ethan died. Mom didn't want me to go, worried it would be too much, but Dr. Chen thought it might help with closure. The hike was hard. The trail was beautiful but steep, and when I got to the section where it happened, marked now with a small memorial plaque someone had placed, I had to sit down for a while. I thought about Ethan hiking the same trail, full of excitement and energy and life. I thought about the storm rolling in, the moment things went wrong, the fear he must have felt. But I also thought about him doing something he loved, pushing himself, challenging himself, being brave, even though he'd always been afraid of heights. He died doing something that mattered to him, something that made him feel alive. That didn't make it okay. Nothing made it okay. But it helped somehow. I left some of his ashes there. Mom and Dad had kept a small portion for me, knowing I might want them someday. I scattered them on the trail and said goodbye the way I should have months ago. "Thank you for being my brother," I said out loud, not caring if other hikers heard me. "Thank you for all of it. I'm going to be okay. Someday, I promise." The wind picked up, and I let myself imagine it was him somehow saying goodbye back. Now, almost a year after his death, I'm in a different place. Not better. I don't know if you get better from losing your twin. But different, stronger maybe, more honest with myself. I still see Dr. Chen once a week, still go to the support group, still visit Ethan's grave every few weeks, bringing fresh yellow roses. Rachel and I are getting more serious. She understands the grief, doesn't expect me to be over it. Last week we were watching TV and I started telling a story about something Ethan did in high school. And she just listened, laughing in the right places, asking questions. It felt good to share him with someone new. I've also started volunteering with a grief counseling program for young adults. Sharing my story, the weird, embarrassing, complicated truth of it, has helped other people feel less alone, less crazy, less broken. Your brain protected you until you were ready to handle the truth, I tell them. That's not a weakness, that's survival. Honor that protection, and then honor the person you lost by living fully in reality. Last week I got a tattoo. Ethan's coordinates. The exact latitude and longitude where he died. It's on my left wrist where I can see it every day. A reminder that he was real, that what happened was real, and that I survived it. Mom cried when she saw it, but she said Ethan would have loved it. I think she's right. The real Ethan, not the version I created. He would have thought it was simultaneously morbid and beautiful, and he would have gotten one to match if our situations were reversed. I'm learning to carry him with me in healthier ways, in memories instead of hallucinations, in choices that honor his life instead of denying his death, in the stories I tell about him that make people laugh and cry and understand why losing him felt like losing half of myself, because that's what it was, losing half of myself. And you don't heal from that so much as you learn to live as a different, smaller version of yourself. You learn to be whole again, even with a piece permanently missing. If you're reading this because you lost someone and your brain's doing weird things to cope, maybe creating false memories, or seeing them places they aren't, or refusing to accept they're gone, please know you're not alone. You're not crazy. You're surviving the only way your mind knows how. But also know this. You're stronger than you think. When you're ready, you'll be able to face the truth. And when you do, there are people who will help you through it. Therapists, support groups, family, friends. You don't have to do it alone. Grief is love with nowhere to go. So find new places to put that love. In memories, in stories, and honoring the person you lost by living a life they'd be proud of. That's what I'm trying to do. Every day. For Ethan, and for myself.